Last month I posted a what's on my iPad video, and ever since that video went live, I've been getting a lot of requests to talk more about Procreate, so that's what I'm doing today. If you haven't already, I highly recommend going to feast your eyeballs on that video though. It will be linked in the description box below. As I mentioned in that video, Procreate is definitely one of my most used apps on the iPad. I use it for creating digital art and digital animations in my videos, like the ones that you're seeing on the screen right now. Although it does come at a cost, it has definitely proved to be worth that cost for me. I am not exaggerating when I say there are so many things you can do within this app. So today I'm gonna go over kind of the basics about what you can do within Procreate, but also show some tutorials, some tips, pieces of advice. I don't come from any art background. I'm definitely not going to be the next Picasso or anything, but I have a lot of fun with this app, so I want to share the fun with you. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss more videos that I do, whether it's about the iPad itself or a lot of other videos I do around the organization, stationery, productivity space. I think with that being said, we can just dive right in. First thing you're going to want to do when you open up the app is start a new canvas, and Procreate gives you a lot of preset ones, but you can also make custom ones. So one of my custom ones is Insta Story, which is 1080 by 1920 pixels, and YouTube for thumbnails 1920 by 1080. To make a custom one, you just press this little plus situation at the top, enter in the width, height, any other things that you want to do there. But I'm just going to do a good old square for today. And I'm just gonna zoom this baby out a little bit. The first thing I always do when starting a new canvas is I go into the Actions tab and turn on the drawing guide. And I'm gonna edit the drawing guide and make the grid size a little bit smaller, lower the opacity so it's not as noticeable. I'm also gonna go more black lines. And there we go. Now I have a drawing guide in the form of a grid, which will make, if I'm doing like any handwriting or drawing shapes or anything really, it just is really helpful for me at least to draw with some sort of reference point. One thing to keep in mind is this grid pattern will not export with your final design. So it's really just meant for the actual creation process. Starting with the tabs on the right, there is a layers tab. This is for you to create, different layers of your drawing. Next to the Actions tab is the Adjustments tab, and that's where you can, it's pretty self-explanatory, make some adjustments to each layer of your artwork. The next thing I go to is my brush library. So this is where you get to choose which brush that you want to use. The ones that I probably use the most right now are the monoline, which looks like this. There's also the shale brush, which is a little bit more responsive to pressure, so I like that if I'm doing some brush lettering. I also really like the dry ink brush. As you can see, it's a little bit more textured than the monoline pen, but unlike the shale brush, it doesn't respond to pressure as much. And the technical pen is another one that I use if I'm doing really small writing. On the left is where you make adjustments to the brush size. So I can make my brush really big or really small. And you can also adjust the brush opacity. It really is a personal preference thing, but monoline is definitely the one that I use a lot when I'm doing digital doodles or animations, just because it is so smooth. So it makes it especially great for outline work. Since right now I want to clear my canvas, I could just go to my Layers tab, swipe, and press clear. But I want to take this opportunity to just show you something that I showed in my What's on My iPad video, but I feel like I need to highlight it here, is that to undo or redo actions that you do on your canvas, you just have to use your fingers. So a 2-finger tap will undo, most satisfying thing in the world, and a 3-finger tap will redo. There are undo and redo buttons on the side, but it's just really convenient to have that feature, because when you're drawing with your dominant hand, you can use your other hand and really get into your artwork and zoom in, zoom out, undo, redo. It's just a good time. Another thing I pay attention to before starting a piece of artwork is my color palette. So at the top right is a little circle with the current color your brush is set to. And if you click it, you get a lot of options for colors here. You can go to disc view, classic view, harmony view. You can enter the hex code of a specific color you want to use. Color palettes aren't always the easiest thing to come up with on your own. So a website that I really love to use for finding great color palettes is Coolers. You can generate your own palettes, but I really love to go to the Explore page and see some of the popular color palettes that other people have put together. And if I see a palette that I like, I click it, copy the hex code, go back to Procreate, paste it in, and then the color appears at this top right circle, and all I have to do to add it to my palette is click a square. And I'm gonna go back and get the other colors. And there we go. I have some new color combinations to experiment when I'm doodling or creating animations. Speaking of colors, if there are multiple colors on your screen, which I'm just kind of putting some random ones on here right now, you can use this dropper tool and drag it over the color that you want to pick up, and your brush will pick up that color. Sometimes that comes in handy when you're doing big artwork. It saves you from having to go find the color in your palette. One of the most helpful pieces of advice I can give you when it comes to drawing on Procreate is to embrace layers, because the more layers that you have, the more that you can change little details about your artwork afterwards without affecting the whole canvas. For example, if I'm going to draw a doodle that's going to have a lot of detailed work and a lot of coloring, then I would create one layer for sketching it out in pencil, another layer for the main outlining, multiple layers for different coloring parts of the canvas. Anytime I can add another layer, I tend to do it just because, like I said, it gives you that flexibility. See that workout here? I'm going to take my pencil on the first layer, and I think I'm going to draw a cup. So I'm just going to roughly sketch this out. So there's my very rough sketch of a glass. I don't always do this step, sometimes I just go for it, but if you're really trying to plan something out, doing a rough sketch is really helpful. Before I move on though to outlining, I want to minimize the opacity of this layer so it's not as distracting. So I'm going to go to Adjustments, Opacity, and bring that right down, just so that I can still see it, but it's almost not there. Right here, I'm going to start off with the circle part at the top of the glass. And one thing that I'm not that great at is making perfect shapes, but Procreate kind of solves that for you, because when you create a shape, you draw it, and then if you hold your pencil down, it recognizes what shape you're going to create. And if you keep holding down your pencil, you can make it bigger or smaller. You can then go to Edit Shape at the top and continue making adjustments. So I make a few adjustments here. And you can do the same thing for squares. Hold, edit shape, make some tweaks if you want. You can do it for lines, for drawing straight lines. So if you kind of make wonky lines, you just hold it, it becomes a straight line. Really useful. So I'm going to use it again here for the edges of the glass. I'm going to draw my line, hold, adjust, bam. Draw, hold, keep holding and adjust. And then again at the bottom, draw, hold, adjust. I don't really like that. Sometimes it takes a few tries before you get it right. Now I've got my basic outline, so I'm going to create another layer, drag it below layer 2, because this is going to be the juice portion of the glass. And I dragged the layer below here for this reason. If I dragged it up top and tried coloring in, then I'd have to be really precise with this edge. I'd have to be really careful not to touch that line. And as you can see, even if I was careful, it wouldn't look perfect. But if I drag it below, cleans it right up. So you don't have to be as precise, which is nice. Another coloring tip is that if you're gonna draw something or color in something that's very big, you can outline the area like I am doing, and you don't have to be very precise about it, but you do have to make sure that it's all connected. And then at the top right, you take your color and drag it in, and it fills in the space. Now this is awesome, but as you can see, if you look up closely, there are places where the fill just didn't hit. So I like this tool, but you do have to be careful when using it, especially if you're doing work for something that you're gonna sell. Now I'm gonna add another layer for my straw. I've drawn my straw, but I'm not happy with the positioning of it, and thankfully I have drawn it on its own layer, so I'm able to easily move it around by pressing this little pointer button at the top to transform it to a different position. I can flip it horizontally, flip it vertically. That's not really what I need right now. I can make it smaller or bigger, but I just want to adjust it maybe to the side, angle it a bit. At this point, I'm gonna hide my pencil layer because I don't really need it anymore. I'm gonna add some more details to my straw here. I'm gonna add another layer for creating some bubbles. I'm gonna create another layer for some splashes. One thing that I am noticing though is that I want a little bit more distance between my two little splashes. So because I drew the two splashes on one layer, if I just use the transform tool, I'm gonna be moving both of the droplets, but I just wanna move one of them. So to do that, I go to the selection tool and I trace over the droplet that I want to move, press transform, and now I can move just this part of the doodle. It is ready to export now. I like to typically export my doodles or animations as PNGs. So I'm gonna take off my background color, go to actions, go to share, go to PNG, and I'll just airdrop that to my laptop or my phone, depending on what I wanna use this for. We could stop here and be completely done with our doodle. But typically when I export things, especially to YouTube, I like to add life to my doodles and to my text by animating them. For this doodle, I think it really makes sense to make the splashes kind of move rather than the whole thing move. The way you switch gears to animation mode in Procreate is to now think of all of these layers that you've created as not just layers, but as frames for each part of your animation. If I were gonna go to animated PNG right now, as you can see, I have all these layers laid out like this. This is what would happen. I'm starting off by grouping together all parts of my animation. I'm gonna collapse the first group, and that's gonna be the first frame of my animation. And then I'm gonna duplicate this group. It's gonna be frame 2. I want these splashes to be moving. So I'm gonna go to my splash layer and I'm going to transform them, and I'm just gonna make them bigger. So you can actually see the first frame below that. But what's gonna happen is we're just gonna make them bigger. And then I'm gonna bring back the first layer and duplicate it and bring it on top of frame 2, because this is going to become frame 3. And then I can go below to either animated GIF, PNG, MP4, but I like to go animated PNG. I can change the frames per second. I'm also going to turn on transparent background, export it, and there we go. I think there's so much more life to that than just like a still doodle. And in video, I always think movement is really good for pacing. So I like that added touch. I'm gonna start a new canvas, get my drawing guide on, get my grid size and my opacity down, and do some animated text. So with animated text, we can do the same thing that I just did right there, make things small, big, and we'll just write, what should I write? Paintbrush. We've got paintbrush written down, and I can duplicate this layer, make it bigger, and duplicate the first layer that's smaller, and just go straight to animated PNG. And I have a cool up-down animation for my text that I can export to my video. That's one style, or I'm gonna get rid of those layers. I can create a new layer, lower the opacity temporarily of this first layer, and then on layer 2, I'm gonna try and trace over it. And you might be thinking, well, what's the point of that? But as you're gonna see, it's actually gonna have a cool effect. So again, for layer 2, I'm gonna just lower the opacity so that I can kind of see what I'm working with here. Add another layer, trace over, and I think I'm just gonna do 3 frames. So I'm gonna go back to layer 2, get that opacity back up, go back to layer 1, opacity back up, and then when I go to animated PNG, look at that. It looks like the font's moving in a way. There's so many options and ways that you can animate. So if you just keep in mind that basic principle that, okay, layers now become frames, then you can figure out like, okay, well, what do I want moving or switching or changing each frame, and you can make those adjustments. You can also insert a photo into Procreate. You can add text. Another cool thing about Procreate is under the Actions tab, you can go to time-lapse replay and actually see a replay of you creating whatever artwork that you did, which is just really neat to see how it all comes together. I could honestly just keep going and going with this because Procreate really does just have so many amazing features, that I have even yet to explore. And I've been using this app for well over a year, maybe 2 years. It's definitely one of those things that you have to kind of just get in there and experiment for you to really get the gist of how everything fits together and works. But I find it really user-friendly, very intuitive, and it's just been a game changer for my editing, for my Instagram story creation, for other projects I'm working on. I don't know what I would do without this app. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comment section below, A, have you used Procreate? And B, if you do, what do you use Procreate for? And if you don't, what do you plan on using it for? Is it gonna be more just as a digital canvas? Do you wanna create cool Instagram stories? Are you wanting to find ways to spice up your video editing? If you have any questions or requests, specific requests for more videos, whether it's related to Procreate or just the iPad in general, also let me know. There are more tips that I feel like I could have covered in this video that I just didn't get a chance to. So maybe there's an opportunity for a part 2 here. I had 4 up too. Don't forget to check out that What's on My iPad video if you haven't already. And I think that's about it. So I'll wrap things up here. I will see you all very soon with a new video. And until then, bye everyone. Where am I gonna put this text? There we go. I feel like we needed to end on an animated doodle. Look at all the confetti happening there. So much fun.